Greetings and welcome to the second sign. Now, if you were with us in the pre-show that just took place, you would have caught a catch-up from the last 10 minutes of last week's hourly segment of Stanley Plotkins Watch Along. Otherwise, you'll just have to check if you want to catch up with this, if it's the first time you're watching it. The legal deposition of Stanley Plotkins. There are links in the description to where you can see the whole thing in one playlist. I recommend catching up with them. Before we actually go on to that, I will firstly start by saying hello to Graham and Mudlark, who are in the live chat tonight. We've also live over on Rumble, so if anyone's watching over there and wants to tune in, wants to say hello or share any thoughts, your live chat is there. That's not to say there aren't other things going on in the world other than Stanley Plotkins tonight. Right, I did a live stream Thursday where the news headlines were absolutely dominated by the murder, or alleged, supposed murder, even though the press reported it, every detail of it on the day it happened, which, to be honest, doesn't actually happen in real life. How quickly we forget these people. They are... the news headlines now today in the United Kingdom is it will be now that England lost a football match. We were following along in the pre-show just in case anyone cares. I pointed out that I don't particularly. Being an Englishman, you might say, "Oh, you wouldn't be saying that if England won." No, honestly, I would. But I believe that if you like. Commiserations, people of England, don't let it ruin your day. It's a fixed sporting event after all. It's not worth the bother. I've got to take that text off the screen. So, however, the other thing that will also, if you're in another part of the world, Graham was talking about in the live chat, is the alleged assassination attempt on previous president, possible future president Donald Trump. And I will just point out one picture. I mean, Graham pointed out how it looked like a PR stunt. And when you see pictures like this, which couldn't be more crystal clear, made for the cameras, imagery of Trump triumphantly thrusting his fist with blood over him, with the United States flag flapping in the background. Although someone on Twitter, they're already here, also pointed out that it looks very soft, for, I don't know how old Trump's meant to be, nearly 80 now, and yet his hand didn't look it right. I can't go too off subject, but they're the two big deals that are going on here in the United Kingdom. If you want to know my thoughts on any of them, well, you should have caught the pre-show. It'll be available on YouTube for about 24 hours. Right, back to our Stanley. We possibly will cover these stories more in depth on Thursday. That's my next live stream. But until then, we are gonna stick with Stanley Plotkins. Just to give you a recap on the last 5 episodes. Episodes 1 and 2 pretty much established. Right, if you're not familiar with the case, I do recommend watching from the beginning. Divorced parents of a child. We're not told how old this child is, or any of its medical history. The mother is taking the father to court to stop it being vaccinated. Stanley is being brought in as an expert witness to testify that these vaccines are safe. So the plaintiffs, which is the mother, uses their co-counsel, who is made up of Aaron Siri, and what's the lady's name? It was Aaron Siri and Amy Ruby are the counsel for the plaintiff, while Laura Newer is the counsel for the defendant. She objects every so often, but we don't hear much from them. The main person we hear about is from talking is Aaron and Stanley. Stanley, as we found out in parts 1, travels all over the world to consult and give advice to companies wanting to build vaccines. However, the second part, we found out just that Stanley Plotkins is more than just a, you know, his case for being an expert witness is quite financially driven. In fact, I think it's either part 3 or part 4. Stanley Plotkins is forced to say, I don't like you implying that I'm doing this for the money, and Aaron points out, no, you're the only person that's actually even suggested anything about you doing it for the money. Yeah, Stanley's had him rattled. Stanley's been rattled a couple of times. He started stuttering, gulping his water desperately. We are into the 6th hour of this deposition, which we're going to start watching in a second, or else we'll run out of time. Okay, let's bring up our video. Okay, we were just finding out, yeah, Stanley's testifying that these vaccines, which he has a financial interest in, are safe for any child to take. And we find out just how many injections or treatments a healthy child is supposed to have, and it is a ridiculous number. Part 3, I think that was covered, or part 2 actually. What was yeah, we heard about in part 4 they went on to the testing periods for some of the vaccines, like ridiculously short amount of times. That this is what gets included on the patient information leaflet, or the inserts, the marketing material basically that are sold to whoever does the injections. This is in the United States, so slightly different than here in the United Kingdom, but not hugely. Vaccine manufacturing is worth billions. Yeah, 50 billion in 2017, I believe, was the number quoted. By we find out, yeah, you do find out what I think is quite interesting, worthwhile information. If you are somebody who doesn't particularly think that, not that I would ever go against any advice that the World Health Organization gives. I've been told in no uncertain terms by YouTube I'm not allowed to do that. So, however, if you are not someone that believes a child needs to be injected on the first day of its life with a product, which we find out the testing wasn't that thorough. I mean, some of it was for like efficiency of the treatment, how long it will affect the body for, and fight off vaccines according to them. These tests went on for, you know, over a year, 18 months. The ones to actually test any adverse side effects, 4 or 5 days. And we're in part 5, the last episode, we heard about in one of the tests they did, they had a group of the people that took the vaccine in the test group, 2 to 3, I think it was 2.3% of these people ended up with an autoimmune disease within, I'm not sure the time frame, but yeah, people suffered autoimmune diseases. However, the test group who received just received a placebo, none of them were affected. And Stanley's answer to that was, well, you should have had more people in the test group. So almost saying that, yeah, the testing we do for the actual adverse effects of our treatment, they're not really sufficient. And we're just getting on with finding out that there's what they call grandfather products or grandfather vaccines, which were never tested, or there's no actual testing about them, but they're so common that they're just included anyway. And yeah, they're just getting onto that subject now. So I think we'll play on as it's already 20 past the hour. We'll try and go, the clock on the screen just underneath Stanley, you can see says January the 11th, 2018, 13:59. We'll try and go to, you know, what would be 4 p.m. We'll get another hour in if we can, unless they go for a break, in which case we'll see how we get on. Okay, I'm gonna start watching this video. Yeah, as I say, Stanley once or twice has looked like he just wants to get up and walk out of there. He literally looks fed up. But this court case is worth too much if they set a precedent where a parent's allowed to overrule another parent about the receival of treatment due to safety concerns. That would be hugely disastrous. So Stanley is there. Yeah, we find out just how influential he is, the corrupt voting processes for getting products onto a list of the CDC schedule each year. Oh, it makes you shudder. As I said, if you're someone that doesn't particularly believe kids need that, and people say, you know, what proof have you got? They don't accept your words. Well, this Stanley Plotkins is an authority. He's being forced under oath to admit, you know. We'll watch it and listen to yourself.
Cover. DTaP vaccines given at 2 months of age, correct?
Yes.
And at 4 months of age?
Yes.
And at 6 months of age?
Yes.
18 months?
Yes.
At 3 to 4 years of age?
Yes.
Then again at 11 years of age?
Yes.
In the slightly Tdap version?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here you have just one vaccine, put aside the other one, that is given over an extended period of time. But yet, as we saw, you know, as the manufacturer interest will show, there is no clinical trial that I'm aware of, and I'm happy for you to show me or produce one.
Okay, just to recap, as I said, they're talking about a grandfather product. Unfortunately, I don't know the name off the top of my head. DCAP or something. And Stanley said it's not a grandfather product. It has been tested. And Stanley's now having to accept that, well, he's being asked for proof of this testing because it's not included on the manufacturer's insert that they give to the, you know, that they sell with these vaccines. Not that the actual person receiving the injections probably ever looks at it, but because we don't obviously buy our own vaccines and take them home, do we? It's given to us at you have to go somewhere to receive it. Particularly here in the United Kingdom, normally a doctor's surgery. Back in 2022, I think they opened up churches and public buildings and were inviting everyone to come. And I think actually people turned up and did them out the back of vans. How dodgy is that? Yeah, there was a van actually in Bath that pulled up outside the Lidl supermarket, and yeah, they were injecting people out the back of a van. My goodness. Anyway.
That actually does what the study in Enbrel does, which is has a saline placebo-controlled group and reviews safety over anything more than, you know, typically a few days or 30-day period.
I dispute that. I think is almost certain, or certain in my mind, that they observed the patients over a longer period of time, but that they looked specifically for acute reactions during the first few days after immunization. And also, I add to that, and I insist on repeating, that one has to look at the total experience with a drug or a vaccine over a period of time, not simply what is in the FDA package circular.
So are you saying that we should, instead of relying on clinical data, saline, inert placebo-controlled studies, we should just rely on the experience? Well, isn't it true that there's a lot of people out there? In fact, you've said used a lot of adjectives for them today so far, who are out there and say that their experience is that vaccines have caused all kinds of serious adverse reactions. Isn't that precisely what is on section 6.2 of each of those inserts? if your approach is used, why are they not given equal weight? I mean, if that's the way we're going to do science.
Yeah, Aaron is referencing something that was brought up in part one. Stanley was very dismissive and disregarding of the of certain websites which basically listed the experiences of parents who say their child was injured, or that, just vaccine injuries that list them, and he described it as disgraceful, although the one he actually described as disgraceful was the fact that people were coming up with exemption letters and reasons to say you're exempt, and he found that absolutely disgraceful that anyone didn't want to use his product. He's a heck of a businessman, I'll give him that.
I'm asking.
Oh, and sorry, we also found out a very successful businessman financially. He's made literally millions from vaccines.
For the clinical data.
Science depends on a body of work. It does not depend on any single studies. It depends on repetition, on data that confirm other data.
Oh, anyone notice he's now contradicting himself? He was earlier, so he keeps referring to the inserts of as circulars, as manufacturers' circulars, marketing material basically, saying that what the clinical studies that they talk about in there aren't that relevant, and now he's going on about how important it is to do clinical studies. Make your mind up, Stanley.
And so you cannot take any single study and rely on that and say that is the truth. The truth comes out of repetition and experience.
So is your point just to trust you versus actually have the actual data to support?
No, it's the accumulation of data.
And you can provide the data to support everything you're saying?
Okay, I'm going to make a guess here. I have seen this once before, but I don't, it was a long time ago. He's going to reference his book that he's written out. He keeps claiming that his book's full of all the information that Aaron requests. Well, he doesn't keep saying that, but he will. I'm guessing he's going to tell him to go buy my book, which probably costs hundreds of dollars, I'm guessing.
Here today, correct?
Everything that I'm saying is in this book.
Called it. Are you prepared to read it out then, Stanley? In fact, in the last part, I do recommend watching it back. Stanley was forced to find the information that he claimed was in the book. I recommend watching it, going back.
You wrote that book?
Sorry?
You're the editor of that book, correct?
Yes.
It's called Plotkins Vaccines?
Yes.
Dr. Plotkin, what is thrombocytopenia?
Decreased platelets.
Okay. Can it be caused by an autoimmune reaction? Isn't that what it's known to be caused by, the body attacking its own platelets?
That's one of the reasons, yes.
Okay. Can the MMR vaccine cause thrombocytopenia?
Yes.
Okay.
These are some long words. Obviously, check them out yourself to figure them out. To learn more about them.
What is brachial neuritis?
Brachial neuritis is basically a reaction to a local injection where you have pain.
He's going to say it's a sore arm, basically. Nothing much, just a sore arm.
In the arm.
I'm going to read you a definition of brachial neuritis from Johns Hopkins Medicine, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree with it. Quote, brachial neuritis is a form of peripheral neuropathy that affects the chest, shoulder, arm, and hand. Peripheral neuropathy is a disease characterized by pain or loss of function in the nerves that carry signals to and from the brain and spinal cord, the central nervous system, to other parts of the body, end quote.
Yes.
Okay. Can DTaP
That's a little more than a pain in the arm, hey, Stanley.
can DTaP or Tdap cause brachial neuritis?
If it's administered in the incorrect way, yes.
Okay. Can the MMR cause febrile seizures?
Yes.
Can the flu shot cause Guillain-Barré syndrome?
Uncertain, but possible.
Wow, what a load of concessions he's just had to make.
Can the DTaP or TDAP cause Guillain-Barré syndrome?
Not that I'm aware of.
Hepatitis B cause Guillain-Barré syndrome?
Again, I don't think the evidence supports that. Guillain-Barré syndrome is a not uncommon event, particularly in adults.
After vaccination, is that what you mean?
No, I mean in general.
In general, okay. Can the hepatitis B vaccine cause encephalitis?
No, I would say definitely not.
Okay. Can the MMR vaccine cause acute or chronic arthritis?
It can cause, in adults, it can cause acute arthralgia, I would say, pains in the joints, but that does not seem to be a permanent phenomenon. And it's unusual in children.
So yes for the acute in adults, but otherwise uncertain?
In children, it must be quite rare if it occurs at all.
But
But it does occur in adult women.
Can the flu shot, DTaP, or Hep B cause transverse myelitis?
That snare, by the way, that is a very common response to a lot of these questions. Almost like, what a ridiculous question.
I would say that's unlikely.
And once again, the hand covering the head. This is again a common pose. I think it's the body language, just to tell he's uncomfortable. He's trying to hide his face. He knows the camera's filming him while he says these words. But the words themselves are bad enough, you know.
You said influenza, what would you say, hepatitis B?
Or DTaP.
Or DTaP.
At this point, completely covering his face.
I think that's the most unlikely.
More likely that it would be the flu shot or Hep B?
Well, it's difficult with influenza because it's such a widely used vaccine, but I don't see any medical reason why any one of those vaccines should cause transverse myelitis.
But it has been reported.
It has been reported. Influenza, okay. I suppose, maybe, but I'm not aware of any proof.
Are you aware that, okay. Can hepatitis B or the flu shot cause fibromyalgia?
Fibromyalgia, that's such a vague syndrome.
Well, let's have a look. Fibromyalgia. Let's have a look. Also known as fibrositis and fibromyalgia, a disorder that affects muscle and soft tissue characterized by chronic muscle pain, tenderness, fatigue, and sleep disturbances. Common among 35 to 50, more common in females. That seems to be something that comes up quite a lot here, is that a lot of these seem to affect women, or females rather, more likely than they do. And the main treatment is to reduce the pain and improving the quality of life. Okay, we'll go back.
Again, difficult to know, but influenza is, there are some differences between influenza vaccine and other vaccines, but with hepatitis B, I don't see any reason why it should cause fibromyalgia.
So no on the Hep B and maybe on the flu?
Yeah, I guess boils down to that.
Can the DTaP or Tdap cause acute disseminated encephalomyelitis?
I would say no.
Yeah, of course you would say no, Stanley. You don't want to say yes to any of these, really.
Can the hepatitis A vaccine cause autoimmune hepatitis?
Oh dear, no.
Now that, unfortunately, I can't skip back, but that was a classic face he just pulled. Scratched his mouth, his face turns right down. Oh no. Okay, we'll let him carry on talking.
Can hepatitis B cause lupus?
I see no reason why it could.
That's a no?
No.
Can influenza cause lupus? Influenza vaccine.
I can see no mechanistic reason why it would, and so I would say no.
Okay. Can the hepatitis B vaccine cause rheumatoid arthritis?
There have been studies along those lines, and I would say that they're unconvincing as far as the vaccine causing rheumatoid arthritis. The difficulty is that rheumatoid arthritis is a common disease, and it of course occurs frequently in adults, so it's very difficult to know whether some precipitating event could have caused it. But at this point, I would say no.
Vaccines are also commonly given to most people in the country, correct?
They're often given, yes.
So determining causality really requires a double-blind placebo-controlled study, correct?
It does if you want to be certain, or at least a statistically strong relationship.
We'll just have a look what that means. Double-blind control group, did he say? Because earlier on they talked about one control group where one received a saline placebo, the other received a completely different vaccine. It was because, well, I say completely different. It didn't. There was one particular ingredient in the vaccine they were trialing that they thought could affect a certain part of the body. It involved aluminium binding itself. Basically, they called it T cells. Is that what they mean by a double-blind control group, where you give... Right, so, according to the first answer on Bing, double-blind control is a type of experimental procedure in which neither the subject nor the experimenters know which subjects are in the test and control groups. Got it. So not only are the people being tested unaware, but also the people given the test. That is a double-blind control group.
What do you mean by statistically strong relationship?
I mean a situation where you have a comparative group and you can say that compared to the comparative group, that the association you're looking at is statistically different than the control group.
And from that, you believe you can determine causation?
Well, you can determine association. Then you have to look and see whether there is some kind of biological explanation.
Well, isn't it difficult to determine association? Isn't it difficult to determine association when it comes to vaccines and a alleged injury, because everybody's, for the most part, gets vaccinated?
That is true. That is precisely why there are so many false associations between vaccines and disease.
Isn't it also the reason then that careful preclinical studies using an inert placebo should be conducted before licensure.
It would be ideal to do so, but one would also have to would have to be very large studies and covering different age groups, and by and large, those data come out much later after experience with a vaccine used in thousands or millions of people.
And those results are not included on the information leaflets that are sold alongside vaccines.
Well, that of course presumes that the adverse events are long-term adverse events are rare, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Stanley likes making his presumptions.
Do you know whether faith is susceptible to any? I'm going to try.
Just while Aaron stutters a minute, I'll just take this time to say Faith is the name of the child who the parents are arguing over whether should be vaccinated or not.
Strike that. There's a lot of conditions, so I'm going to try this a little bit of a different way so we can get through.
Hang on, did he say there's a lot of conditions? I don't know if he means that the child's got or... Okay, we'll let him carry on.
It's a bit quicker. Is Faith susceptible to suffer any of the conditions we have reviewed thus far?
You mean the infectious diseases or the non-infectious diseases?
I'm talking about the adverse event. I'm talking about the conditions that we just reviewed, starting with thrombocytopenia and ending with rheumatoid arthritis.
I know nothing about the child, and therefore I'm unable to answer.
Do you know whether Faith has a genetic variant that renders her predisposed to suffer any of these conditions from vaccination?
I do not.
Do you know whether Faith has a genetic variant in her microbiome DNA that renders her predisposed to suffer any of the conditions we reviewed?
I am not aware of that.
Okay. Do you know whether Faith has any environmental exposure that would render her predisposed to suffer any of the conditions that we've just reviewed?
No.
Okay. In 1991, the IOM issued a report regarding vaccine safety. Are you familiar? Correct?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that report?
Yes.
That report looked at 22 serious injuries associated with DTaP vaccines and rubella vaccines, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Did you provide information to the... Was that a yes?
Yes.
Did you provide information to the IOM committee conducting this review?
I believe I sent them papers. I was not involved with the committee in any direct way.
Are you aware of whether they thanked you in the introduction?
They may have. I mean, I obviously was a source of information about rubella vaccine, for example.
The IOM searched for evidence regarding whether DPT can cause autism, correct?
Yes.
And they could not find any evidence that would help them to make any determination one way or another with regard to whether DPT causes autism, correct?
Well, if you mean that they use their statement of not having enough information to make a decision, probably yes.
Which you could also say as they didn't test it, they didn't gather the information, they didn't do enough testing to determine whether autism could be caused by this particular vaccine or not.
Do you recall that they had 5 categories of conclusions, Dr. Plotkin, in that report?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. The first category, strike that.
suppose I should fill in these.
Do you recall that the first
oh,
category was no evidence bearing on a causal relation?
I don't recall specifically, but I believe you're correct.
Okay, well I'll give you a copy. Let's get you a copy.
Yeah, this is the 5 possible outcomes of the trial they did, I guess. I think that's what they're saying.
Going to hand you, Dr. Plotkin, what's being marked as Exhibit 19. Yeah, you send it? Okay. Dr. Plotkin, the title of this is The Adverse Effects of Pertussis and Rubella Vaccines, correct?
Yes.
This was by the Institute of Medicine in 1991. Okay, so if we go to all the way, if you go to the second to last page, Dr. Plotkin.
This is 100% the last thing Stanley wants to be reading. A publication about adverse effects caused by vaccines.
I suspect that's what you're looking for. All right. This is a table of the summary of conclusions by adverse event for DPT and MMR, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there are 5 conclusion categories, correct? The first one is no evidence bearing on a causal relation, correct? And what that means, if you see the, was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. If you go to footnote C, which defines what no evidence bearing on a causal relation means, isn't it true that it says, no category of evidence was found bearing on a judgment about causation. All categories of evidence left blank in table 1.1-1, correct?
Yes.
Okay. There's only one condition for which they couldn't find any evidence one way or another on whether whether the vaccine causes that condition, correct?
Right.
And that was, what was that condition?
Autism.
Okay. Now, the IOM reviewed whether DPT can cause 17 other serious conditions. And on this chart, it found that evidence supported a causation for 4 of them. For DPT, rejected causation for 4 of them, but that the evidence was insufficient to determine causation for 9 of them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. As for the MMR vaccine, the IOM reviewed 4 conditions, right? For the first 2, was that a yes, Dr. Plotkin?
Yes.
I hate to trouble you, but if you could say yes instead of it would speed things along a bit. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think he says when he doesn't want to say yes. It's a begrudged agreement.
For 2 of them, it found that the evidence was insufficient to make a causation determination, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But for chronic arthritis, it found that the evidence is consistent with a causal relationship.
Yes.
That would be there's evidence consistent with a causal relationship between the MMR vaccine and chronic arthritis, correct?
Yes.
And it also found that the evidence indicates a causal relationship between the MMR vaccine and acute arthritis, correct?
Yes.
Do you dispute these findings?
Well, first of all,
He's going to criticize this trial.
IOM's later report was not as definitive as far as chronic arthritis is concerned. And the evidence for the consistency, first of all, it must be stressed, we're talking about adults women receiving the vaccine, not children. And the other point is that the data really came from one center in British Columbia and was not generally seen. As far as acute arthritis is concerned, it really should be arthralgia, not arthritis, because there's a difference between those two things.
Yeah, well, Stanley, there may well be a difference between arthritis and arthralgia or ralgia, but they were actually testing for acute arthritis. Now, you might want to say that it's actually a different condition that your vaccines cause, but that isn't what this particular trial found.
But anyway, there's no doubt that the vaccine does cause pains in the joints, but again, particularly in adult women.
Hang on, what's he saying? No doubt vaccines cause pain in the joints, particularly for adult women.
It is not a big problem in children.
On the next page,
But is a big problem with adults. Great.
Dr. Plotkin, where it says of the report, it's under research needs. Does the first sentence say, in the course of its review, the committee encountered many gaps and limitations in knowledge bearing directly and indirectly on the safety of vaccines?
Yep.
Okay, and then the last sentence of that paragraph says, clearly if research capacity and accomplishment in these areas are not improved, future reviews of vaccine safety will be similarly handicapped, correct?
Right, correct.
Okay.
So I think it's worth pointing out that the vaccine community did respond to those conclusions, and that
And that what, Stanley? They tried to discredit it, perhaps? The vaccine community, the people that make money from the sale of these vaccines, of course.
in particular, CDC set up a situation with centers like Kaiser Permanente in California, where they do very elaborate safety studies because they have a large populations receiving vaccines or not receiving vaccines, and they can do comparative studies. And in addition, WHO has set up safety reviews on vaccines. And of course, CDC has a safety department, and there are funded sort of safety centers throughout the country.
Okay.
So it's not as if the vaccine community has ignored the issue of vaccine safety.
Well, wonderful. We'll go through all of that, I can assure you. But I got to take it piece by piece, okay? So one step at a time, and we will get to Kaiser and the various things that you just talked about, and we'll address all of them. I just want, hopefully we get to everything. All right. You know what? Why don't we take just a 2-minute quick break?
I'm going to end this.
Perfect.
This ends just number 3 of the deposition of Dr. Stanley. We are going off the record. The time is 14:23. This is the beginning of
Apologies, the mute button didn't come off. Yeah, I was just saying now, they've taken their intermission. We're going to do likewise in just a minute. I will need to refill my drink. We've got about 30 minutes left of this. We're going to cover another 30 minutes of this particular part of the deposition. All right, we'll carry on for another at least, we'll see, another 5 minutes or so before we take a break.
Number 4 of the deposition of Dr. Stanley Plotkin. We are on the record. The time is 14:33.
Dr. Plotkin, you earlier said that it would be ethical, you believe, to conduct a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study of the childhood immunization schedule using adults. Is that correct?
No, yeah, this is something else that came up in earlier parts. They talk about it being unethical to repeat trials, which makes me wonder, did some of these trials cause so much misery and illness among living human beings, or was it the way the tests were done, perhaps how they found people to test? Well, let's see if they go into that, because I never quite understood, or they never explained why it would be unethical to repeat some of these trials.
Well, I mean, you can't. I suppose you could test the childhood schedule in adults, but it wouldn't make a lot of sense if that's what you mean. You could test individual vaccines, I suppose, although the adults, in all likelihood, will have been either previously vaccinated or previously infected. So it wouldn't be a very easy study to do. But I suppose it's conceivable.
And you think, but it is something that could be done to assess certainly adults are not children, but it would at least give a sense of the safety profile of people who've, on the one hand, gotten the childhood schedule versus those who haven't. And I would think it's something that you would, that you would welcome, given that it should hopefully, I presume, show that both groups will have similar rates of of total health outcomes.
Well, it's difficult to imagine how one would do it. Now, for example, for Haemophilus influenza.
Actually, I do believe Stanley's reason for believing that it's unethical is actually, I'm guessing, I'm not sure, I think he's saying that to leave a child unvaccinated would be cruelty. I'm guessing that's what he means. He hasn't explicitly stated that, but I wonder if that's his reason for saying it's unethical to repeat tests, because you couldn't possibly leave a child unvaccinated, or whatever.
Disease is rare in adults, of the type B anyway, and so I'm not sure what one would learn by doing such a study. For hepatitis B,
the adverse
of course,
events, not the efficacy, Dr. Plotkin.
Yeah, well, I suppose, but whether it would be translatable from adults to children is uncertain in itself. So I don't think it's a very practical way of studying the safety of vaccines. Fortunately for hepatitis B, it's indicated for adults as well as children, so that's something that can be done. And papillomavirus vaccine, of course, can be given to adults. So we have data from that type of study. But in terms of systematic studies of childhood vaccines in adults, I don't think that's a very feasible or useful.
If the group that received, the adults that received the full schedule versus those that didn't, had significantly higher rates of autoimmune or neurological or other adverse events, you don't think that could provide useful information for potentially addressing potential safety concerns and making the schedule safer?
So for that, you need a group of adults who have never received vaccines.
Why is that?
Well, what are you comparing? If you're comparing those who were vaccinated as children with those who weren't, so you need a group that was not vaccinated.
Well, most adults today have not received anywhere near the number of vaccines that children are being exposed to today. So, for example, Dr. Plotkin, when you were a child, as an example, what vaccines did you receive?
Diphtheria. In childhood, I think it was probably only diphtheria.
Okay.
Those.
What a lucky man. He was only vaccinated against one. I don't know. That's for your... you make that call, whether he was lucky or not.
So if such a study were constructed, would you be willing to participate?
You mean as someone who did not receive?
Would you be willing to be part of the study in which you would either, you would be randomized, so you'd either get the saline injections or the full childhood vaccine schedule? Would you be willing to do that?
But then you'd have
I'm
to
sorry,
have...
I didn't hear the answer. Would you be willing to do that?
Yes, but then you'd have to have a group of 80-year-olds who have received all of the childhood vaccines that are now given, which would be pretty difficult to do. So I think this kind of study you're talking about is either difficult or useless because you don't have the right groups to compare. You could do it perhaps in 20-year-olds if you could find 20-year-olds who haven't been vaccinated.
Well, if it was, if they did age controls and so they had a range of ages, including 80s and 20-year-olds, would you be willing to participate?
Oh, I'd be willing to participate in any reasonable study,
Great.
But I don't think it would be very useful.
Okay.
Stanley's just opening himself up for receiving all the vaccines that are given to children. I doubt he'd be too keen.
In 1994, the IOM issued another report regarding vaccine safety. Are you familiar with that report?
94, the
last
last one was in 2000, as I recall.
2011 was the last one.
Well, okay, there was a large one in about 2000 as well. Anyway, so
in 1994, let me give you.
I tell you what, we are going to leave the 1994 trial that Aaron's going to talk about till after our intermission. Let me see. I'm going to find... first of all, if anyone tunes into this video and finds their way to this part of the stream, still watching with us, that is much appreciated. Thank you for being with us. I would actually request, if anyone wants to show their appreciation for tonight's stream, that you might consider hitting the thumbs up button before you finish this evening, subscribing and sharing if you're not already, whether you're on YouTube or Rumble. That'd be much appreciated. Right, I'm going to find a video. As we've had a major tournament here which England were involved in, I'm gonna, let me see, I'm gonna find a video. Oh, that wasn't it. Find a video from one I did about football. I did one, I've done a few actually. I've done about Arsenal players taking part in a fake one. Arsenal players, how long does it go on for? 10 minutes, so we probably won't watch all of it, but this is a video I did probably back in about 2018, I expect. Okay. I'll put a little note up so people know that I'll be back soon. Let me see, where are we? Let's change that to intermission. Back in a minute. It'll take me about 10 minutes to grab myself a drink. Well, less than 10 minutes, but this video goes on for that long. So yeah, here's a video I did a while back about Arsenal players, just to dedicated to England's footballers who were unfortunate in that they couldn't win their game this. They didn't win their cup final. Right, where are we? Okay, hope you enjoy it. I will, like I said, we probably won't watch the whole thing, but we'll certainly watch 5 to 8 minutes of it while I just refill my drink, as it were. Okay, back in a minute. Hi everyone, here in the UK we are between Premier League football seasons, but if you think that means that there's going to be an end to the phony fake stories that these characters keep getting involved in, you are sadly mistaken. The latest news in the Daily Mail involves 2 Arsenal football players, Mesut Ozil and Sead Kolasinac, who were supposedly carjacked. They've broken their silence hours after a terrifying carjack ordeal, according to the Daily Mail. They fought off knife-wielding masked motorbikers who then chased them for a mile. Read this story, I'll leave a link in the description. And seriously guys, if you're remotely convinced that any of it is true, you need to take a reality check, because this is the biggest load of steaming pile of horse manure you could ever imagine. Now, we'll read the story in a minute, but let's just watch this rubbish for a moment. Okay, that's enough of that. That video is all the proof the press need to run this story as absolute fact. Right, take a look how upset and annoyed Mesut Ozil looks here. Now, if that's how he looks after losing a football game, how do you think he looks hours after a terrifying carjacking? Do you want to have a look? This is them. There they are. That's the 2 players involved. What a complete joke. Laughing. Right, let's read the story, yeah? Arsenal stars Mesut Ozil and Sead Kolasinac today broke their silence over the carjacking ordeal which saw them chased for a mile by knife-wielding robbers on mopeds. Okay, they've broken their silence. Bear in mind, barely 24 hours since that happened. They really managed to keep a lid on it, didn't they? The pair were all smiles this morning in a photo posted on Twitter by Kolasinac, which was captioned, "Think we're all fine." And then we see a photograph of security people outside Ozil's home. They were ambushed by the robbers at around 5 PM yesterday, which would have been the 26th of July, as £350,000 a week midfielder Ozil drove his black Mercedes G-Class through leafy Childs Hill in North London. But as the thugs surrounded the 4x4, Ozil's Arsenal teammate and childhood friend, Sead the Tank Kolasinac, leapt out and bravely took them on. Right, if you're in a 4x4 car and you're being pursued by moped riders wanting to steal your car, what's the best thing to do you think? Drive off? Maybe try and nudge them off? Get rid of them? Nah, get out and start fighting them. How stupid. In one of these pictures you see the blade, apparently, just here. That's all the proof we need, hey. Right, CCTV footage from the scene shows Kolasinac swinging punches at the attackers and standing his ground against them despite being threatened with the knife. The attacker's motorbike pulls away as the footage cuts. It's funny, actually. If you look what happens, Ozil drives off and ditches his friend. Meanwhile, just as you're about to see any action, they cut the CCTV footage, don't they? Look how stupid, and the rider gets ready to jump down. They obviously thought the punch looked too fake for them to use, so they had to cut it. But anyway, back to the story. Okay, the footage cuts, but rather than that being the end of the drama, the players were then chased through the mansion-lined streets of North London in a high-speed chase that lasted for more than a mile. Ozil sped off and overtook traffic on the wrong side of the road as ninja-style robbers followed him. They eventually reached a Turkish restaurant on Golders Green Road, where they are known, where they leapt out of the car as staff came to their aid. According to witness, 30-year-old Ozil looked terrified as he jumped out of his car with Kolasinac at the Likya Turkish restaurant. One witness told Mail Online, "I saw Ozil being chased up my high street by boys armed with knives. Knives at the moment, they'd soon change the weapon." It's quite funny actually. Simon Collins, 46, said the moped riders chased Ozil's car past the restaurant before the World Cup winning footballer did a U-turn back towards the restaurant and the moped riders sped off. "They were carrying roof tiles," he said. "The Arsenal players were speeding away from them. They were chasing them and came up to traffic. Ozil's wagon tried to get away and went around the traffic to try and speed away. He had to go on the wrong side of the road." It was all under the speed limit though, so no speeding tickets for anyone on this. The moped guy dropped the tiles and had to quickly jump off and pick them up. I don't know if you've ever dropped roof tiles onto concrete, but they tend to shatter. Anyway, he added, clearly it was their intention to chuck the tiles at the car window and smash it. Well, what the point in that would be if they want to steal the car, having to repair the windows before selling it on, but whatever. CCTV footage captured before the chase began showed burly 6-foot Bosnian Kalosinic squaring up to and rushing at a robber whose face is obscured by a crash helmet. Convenient. 26-year-old darts towards the front end of the Mercedes to face off an attacker as he makes sure the front passenger door is protected. Well, why don't you just stay in the car? I don't get it. But, right, the fullback then turns to the rear of the vehicle to steam towards an oncoming assailant who appears to be wielding a blade, while wearing a motorbike helmet. At this point, Ozil is able to drive forward in the £100,000 SUV as Kalosinic swings his bare fists at the thug. And here they are with their respective wives. The would-be robbers picked on the wrong man when they took on the man they call the Tank. Sead Kalosinic, the no-nonsense 6-foot Bosnian international, was born in Germany to refugee parents who fled the hardship of the war in their Balkan homeland. And he reveals in his pretty cool nicknames, Destroyer as well as the Tank. His father, Fake, yeah, he's got the right name there, hasn't he? His father, Fake, said his son's physical stature was down to the family's Bosnian roots. It's all about genetics, nothing to do with steroids, I'm sure. The Kalosinic family settled in blah blah, this is all irrelevant. Mesut Ozil, who obviously sold wedding photos to Associated Press, nothing like cashing in. Hey, I have Germany to thank for everything. This isn't anything to do with the attack. Every week he would return to his mother. Why they're going into all this is totally irrelevant. I think we're getting the backstory of how the Tank, this guy I think, became such good friends with Mesut. Who cares? Right, off camera, Kalosinic was able to rejoin Ozil in the car and they sped away together, pursued by the raiders. Waiters and chefs from the restaurant rushed to the aid of the football stars when they arrived, forcing the riders to flee empty-handed. Well, why would the riders care about waiters and chefs? Neither of the Premier League players from the North London club were harmed. That was good. Financial worker Azuka Alinta, 36, told the Mail Online, "Ozil looks absolutely terrified and anybody would be after being chased by men with..." Okay, that is where we're going to leave our intermission video. If you want to watch the rest of it, I'll put a link in the description. It's on my YouTube back catalogue somewhere. You'll find it. It's called Arsenal Players Take Part in Phony Fake Events, something like that. Just search my channel for the word Arsenal and you should find it, although I will, as I said, put a link in the description. Right, we are going to get back on with the deposition of Stanley Plotkins. Yeah, if anyone's got any thoughts in the live chat, want to let us know, then it's always good to see what you're saying or thinking. If you're watching after this has been streamed live, then yeah, by all means, put a comment in the comment section. Okay, we will carry on. Yeah, they were just going to go on to talk about another trial.
Sounds like you don't remember. Let's just give this to you. Handing you, Dr. Plotkin, what's been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 20. The title of this report is Adverse Events Associated with Childhood Vaccines, correct?
Yes.
This is also by the Institute of Medicine. This is also, in this report, the IOM looked at 54 serious injuries associated with a number of different vaccines, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you provide information to the IOM committee conducting this review?
I don't recall doing that.
Okay.
Just like he didn't recall having any part in the previous trial they talked about, although he did receive a thank you. So, yeah, I think he admitted to submitting information, probably in favour of vaccines. I wouldn't be surprised.
Do you see on, and there are the acknowledgements on the second page? Your name is in the middle there, Stanley Plotkin, Pastor Morak. I can't pronounce. Yeah.
Yeah, he did take part in, or he was instrumental in this study.
Yeah. I don't speak French, I apologize. And can you pronounce that?
Merieux.
That's MEREUX CONNAUGHT company. Okay. Now, if you go to...
That was actually Stanley's pharma company. I think they just mentioned. He certainly knows the pronunciation of it.
Out of these 54 conditioned pairs, the IOM found sufficient evidence to support a causal relationship for 14 of them and rejected a causal relationship for 4 of them. Do you see that?
Where are you referring?
So if you go, Dr. Plotkin, to the fifth to last page, it has the causality table.
Mm-hmm.
You see category 3 is the evidence favors rejection of a causal relationship.
Yes.
Okay, and you see they rejected it for 4 of the associated.
Out of 54 possible adverse reactions or effects or diseases, only 4 of them they could outright reject. 14 of them found, yeah, there is. We can say this study found that 14 adverse reactions were found to occur. That must leave about, 28 or so that they couldn't find anything for?
Adverse events, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You seeing, is that a yes?
Yes.
You see in category 4, it says the evidence favors acceptance of a causal relation?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see that there's 2, 3? There are 5 conditions listed there, including Guillain-Barré, bronchial neuritis, anaphylaxis. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And on the next page for category 5, which is the evidence establishes a causal relation, do you see that it lists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 conditions, correct?
Yes.
Okay. However, for the remaining conditions, so they looked at 54. If we subtract out the 3 categories we just looked at, 38 of those conditions, the 38 remaining conditions, the IOM couldn't make a causality determination because the science hadn't been conducted yet.
Okay, I said 28. It was 38. Got me maths off there.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. The IOM stated at the end of this report, quote, the lack of adequate data regarding many of the adverse events under study was of major concern to the committee. Presentations at public meetings indicated that many parents and physicians share this concern. Do you see the last page of the report that you're holding, of the excerpts? Do you see that it says that in the first 2 lines under need for research and surveillance?
Yes.
Dr. Plotkin, in 2011, the IOM then issued another report on vaccine safety, and this time it looked at 158 of the most commonly claimed serious injuries after vaccination, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Stanley earlier mentioned one that was done in 2000, which I'm guessing probably may have been quite favourable in the possible causes. I mean, conditions, adverse reactions. But yeah, let's see what the numbers are in this one. A lot more.
Yes.
The title of that report is Adverse Effects of Vaccines, Evidence of Causality.
Yes.
You're familiar with that report?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to discredit it in any way, Stanley? We'll see.
Do you know who commissioned and paid for that report, by the way?
Which commission?
Who commissioned and paid for that report?
No.
Okay.
Certainly not the vaccine manufacturers then.
Would it be surprising to you if I told you that HRSA, the agency within the HHS that defends against vaccine injury claims, that commissioned that report?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. Did you provide information to the IOM committee conducting this review?
I don't recall specifically whether I did or not. A lot of people ask for my opinions, and when asked, I give my opinions.
Dr. Plotkin, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Exhibit 21. Is this the 2011 IOM report we were just talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see there's little Roman numeral 7, page little Roman numeral 7? See a section entitled Reviewers?
Oh, yes. I'm on the list.
Okay. Do you see, I'm going to read the first two sentences and you can tell me if that's what this report says. It says, this report has been reviewed in draft form by individuals chosen for their diverse perspective and technical expertise in accordance with procedures approved by the National Research Council's Report Review Committee. The purpose of this independent review is to provide candid and critical comments that will assist the institutions in making its published report as sound as possible and to ensure that the report meets institutional standards for objectivity, evidence, and responsiveness to the study charge. Is that what it says?
Yes.
And you're one of the people that gave the report to you to review?
Yes.
And next to your name it says University of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
It doesn't disclose that at that time you were working for all 4 of the major vaccine makers, correct?
What do you mean by working for them?
He means you were receiving financial remuneration, Stanley, I'm guessing.
I mean, at that point, I was no longer at Pasteur Media Connaught.
Did you, in 2011, were you receiving compensation and remuneration from Sanofi?
I was, yes, as
Look at him completely covering his face from the camera while he says this.
I've said before, I was consulting for Sanofi as well as others.
Were you consulting for Merck?
Yes, probably at that time, yes.
And GSK?
Yes.
Okay. And as well as a whole host of other for-profit companies seeking to develop vaccines, correct?
Yes.
But I'm just saying that's not mentioned here, correct?
No.
Okay. So, do you know how many other individuals who were involved in reviewing or compiling this report were receiving money from pharmaceutical companies making vaccines that's not disclosed in this report?
I have no knowledge of that.
You provided handwritten comments to the IOM for this report?
If I reviewed the report, which apparently I did, I am sure I made comments. I don't know if they were handwritten, probably not, since my handwriting is illegible.
All right. In this report, the IOM found that 14 of the 158 serious injuries most commonly reported after certain vaccines were that the evidence supported a causal relationship, correct?
Is that, where is that stated?
Well, if you go to page 3 of the report, it's numeral 3. Well, let me ask you the question a different way, Dr. Plotkin. If you look at that chart, you can see that there's little symbols. Do you see those, Dr. Plotkin?
Yes.
Okay. So an I represents inadequate to accept or reject a causal relationship, correct?
Yes.
And an FR means favors rejection of a causal relationship, correct?
Yes, apparently, yes.
If you look through this,
No, FA favors acceptance.
I said FR, I'm sorry. FR favors rejection.
Right.
FA favors acceptance. And CS is convincingly supports a causal relationship,
Yes.
right? So I think what you'll note when you look through this chart is that most of the conditions have an I, correct?
Yes.
Any reason? The report indicates that for 135 out of the 158 reviewed, it found that it could not locate sufficient evidence to make a causality determination, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the IOM concluded that of the 135 most commonly claimed injuries from vaccination, it didn't know whether or not the vaccines caused that. Let me ask you something. You know, you earlier stated that hepatitis B doesn't cause encephalitis, right?
That's my opinion, yes.
But the IOM, after doing its review, determined it couldn't find science to support a causal determination one way or another. Correct?
Yes. But that means that they don't have evidence for the supposition.
That it
Right.
either causes or doesn't cause.
Right.
They don't know.
They don't know because there aren't enough data.
Right. But you have, but
In the absence of data, my conclusion is that there's no proof that causation exists.
so if there's no data to show that it causes or it doesn't cause,
Yes.
your supposition is that I understand correctly?
Yes.
Is that it doesn't cause it.
That there's no proof that it does.
Yes, Stanley will always take the positive spin on it. Absolutely.
Okay, that's different than saying it doesn't cause it, correct?
Correct.
So when you were saying earlier that when I asked you at the beginning of this whether certain vaccines cause certain conditions and you said no they don't, did you just mean that no there's not enough evidence to make a decision one way or another?
I mean that there's no knowledge known to me that they do certain things that some may have alleged happen after vaccination.
Like, for example, the IOM reviewed whether hepatitis B can cause lupus because of lots of reports, or influenza can cause lupus. They concluded that there's insufficient evidence one way or another to make a determination. You indicated,
Right.
but you indicated earlier that those vaccines don't cause lupus. Your testimony, you're saying that you said no because you weren't aware of a mechanism by which it could cause it. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But the science really isn't available to make a determination on causation yet, right?
The science doesn't show that there is a relationship. And it is, unfortunately, to prove a negative requires a lot more data than to prove a positive.
If there was a, if there was a study that had a placebo and a control group, then we could know whether or not these conditions are caused by these vaccines, correct?
Yes, it would have to be an enormous study, and it would have to be randomized, ideally, which is unlikely to be the case since...
It needs to be the enormous because you're assuming these conditions are rare, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And
this study that you're saying needs to be done before vaccines are licensed, they do clinical trials, we've seen, right?
yes.
And they have thousands of people typically in them, correct?
Yes, and
Okay.
therefore they can study common conditions. But uncommon conditions are very difficult to study because they are uncommon. And therefore one would need a very, very large study, and one would have to have randomization, which is, of course, inherently difficult.
If you actually had a placebo,
So Stanley is kind of saying that to actually test whether or not to do such testing is very difficult. So not really saying a lot for the safety testing procedures that go into this.
placebo-controlled study, an inert placebo-controlled study of 8,000 people, you could at least determine that in a population of that size, whether or not there is a detectable adverse event rate for any of these conditions, correct?
For some of those conditions, yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to show you, I'd like to show you an excerpt from that report. Okay? Before I do that, actually, a few quick little questions. Tdap is one of the vaccines on the childhood schedule, right?
Yes,
It's administered to babies during the first year of life.
yes,
We already talked about this at 2, 4, and 6 months, right?
yes.
Wow, so perfectly healthy babies are receiving 3 doses of this treatment plan in their first 6 months, in the first year of their life.
Okay. Did I say Tdap or DTaP?
Oh, DTaP is the one that's used.
I meant DTaP. I meant DTaP in that question.
I have Tdap.
Okay. Same answer if it was DTaP, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so let's correct that, please. Now, as for Tdap, TDAP, little d, little a, little p, with a capital T, that's given to pregnant women, correct?
yes,
Okay. And DTaP and Tdap refer to vaccines which contain diphtheria toxoid, tetanus toxoid, and acellular pertussis, correct?
yes.
Okay.
By the way, Tdap is a vaccine given for whooping cough, by all accounts.
What was the IOM's conclusion in 2011 about whether these vaccines can cause autism?
I'd have to.
Did they say given to pregnant women? Because I think it's generally, one of the things they give to pregnant women, and I assume he's asking whether the unborn fetus is at risk of autism. We'll see.
look that up, but I feel confident that they do not cause autism.
You feel confident that that's what the IOM concluded?
I don't remember what the IOM concluded, but I don't believe there's any evidence that that's the case.
Is there any evidence that that's not the case? Why don't I show you this, Dr. Plotkin? I'm going to hand you what's being marked as Exhibit 22. Oh, Dr. Plotkin, may I actually have that back for a moment? I'm sorry. Nope, I gave you the right one. There you go. Thank you. Okay. this is an excerpt from the IOM's report, right?
Yes.
Okay. And this is where the IOM discusses the evidence with regard to whether DTAP or TDAP cause autism, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If you turn to the second page, can you read the causality conclusion with regard to whether DTAP and TDAP cause autism?
The committee did not identify literature reporting clinical, diagnostic, or experimental evidence of autism after the administration of vaccines containing diphtheria toxoid, tetanus toxoid, and acellular pertussis antigens.
Okay. Dr. Plotkin, I'm sorry. Can you please read, Dr. Plotkin, can you please read the causality conclusion with regard to that the IOM reached with one second, Dr. Plotkin. I'm sorry. The court report has got to be able to take down the full question or there won't be a clear record. Can you please read the causality conclusion in the IOM report with regard to whether DTAP and TDAP can cause autism?
The evidence is inadequate to accept or reject a causal relationship between diphtheria toxoid, tetanus toxoid, or acellular pertussis containing vaccine and autism.
You notice his voice started failing in there, perhaps because he's been talking for a long time. Watching this stream, doing it in this stream, we have the luxury of doing it in hour-long parts. Obviously, these people sat there throughout with the odd 10-minute break here and there. So, yeah, we're going to watch another minute or so of it, and we're going to start bringing this stream to a halt, as it is getting late here in the United Kingdom.
So the IOM reviewed the available evidence with regard to whether TDAP or DTAP can cause autism, and their conclusion was the evidence doesn't exist to show whether DTAP or TDAP do or do not cause autism, correct?
Yes, but the point is that there are no studies showing that it does cause autism, except one study by two well-known anti-vaccination figures, Geyer and Geyer, who have no legitimacy whatsoever. So what they're saying is that there's no evidence, and the important point from my point of view is that there is no positive evidence.
Right.
To do a proper study, as we've been discussing, which would disprove it, would involve the controlled administration of vaccines and withholding vaccines from children who should have them.
Dr. Plotkin.
Okay, yeah, there you go. That is why he considers it unethical to study these vaccines, because the thought of any kids not receiving vaccines is so terrible to him, despite the fact when he was a child he only received one, he said earlier. Can't remember what he said he received, but was it diphtheria? I'm not sure. That's certainly what TDAP is for. Since we did DTAP, no, TDAP is vaccine against whooping cough given to pregnant women to protect their unborn child, supposedly. DTAP is a 4-in-1 vaccine against diphtheria, which is a serious disease that usually begins with a sore throat and can quickly cause breathing problems. Percussus, whooping cough. Oh, I'm getting mixed up. Maybe it's... yeah, TDAP. Tetanus, diphtheria. Oh, maybe they're more or less one and the same vaccines. Wow, there is actually here a website called, what is it? Side effects. You know, what are the side effects? But it'd probably be interesting to see who put that particular website together. Okay, with the time on our clock, January 11th, 2018, 15... let me see. 15:00:26, as that is where we'll pick up next Sunday. We've still got another 3 hours and 32, well, it's over 3.5 hours of this deposition to get through. So at the very least, 3 more parts. Great to see Maria in the live chat, by the way. I'm the background noise to your ironing. Well, I hope you have found some of this informative. And yeah, thanks for being here tonight, Maria. The same thing as I would say also to Graham, who was with us earlier, and Mudlark also commented in the live chat. So yeah, massive appreciation. I don't think I brought up my camera today. Yeah, I did actually. Okay, yeah, thank you for tuning in to our stream tonight. Much appreciated. And if you've taken the time to hit the thumbs up button, and even more reason to say thank you very much. We have, yeah, of course, been live both here on YouTube and Rumble, and I will next be back, if not before, on Thursday evening. Although I am going to try and come back before. I said that last week and didn't manage to do another live stream until Thursday, but hopefully this next week will be better. Yeah, if you want to show your appreciation for tonight's stream and you want to hit the thumbs up button before you go, that is always a huge compliment. Subscribing and sharing this video on social media likewise is more than I could ask. However, there are some that do go slightly beyond that, and they get on my wall of thanks. So my thanks and appreciation to the names on the screen. By the way, if you want to watch this 9-hour legal deposition in your own time, all in one go, there are links in the description of this video. Whether you're on YouTube or Rumble, you'll find it. If you want to catch up with previous parts, we've done, this is part 6 of the deposition. There have been 5 hours previous to this, in which a lot of, yeah, I've got to say, I think the best is yet to come. They're talking about the safety studies, the finances. They get into the actual history, the development of vaccines at one point, and yeah, it doesn't make for particularly pleasant reading. Yeah, I'm glad I could be with you while you did your ironing. I hope you can make it back on Thursday. Yeah, last Thursday, the big news here in the United Kingdom was John Hunt's family being killed by a crossbow nutter. This Sunday evening here in the United Kingdom, the big news is England lost in the football, and someone tried to take a shot at President Trump. My thoughts on it, we'll just bring up the display one more time. Yeah, that looks pretty staged for the cameras to me. But yeah, I like the words, by the way, that sit alongside Bevan at Thug Laif on Twitter. He's put some interesting words. The world is a stage. The earth is flat and motionless. Dinosaurs never roamed the earth. Fiat is a theft. There is no virus. Einstein was wrong. Yeah, I like it. Bevan, thank you for sharing this picture that we're using to illustrate tonight's stream. And what was the other big news? Yeah, unlucky England. But as I said, don't let it ruin your week. Don't let it ruin your day. A lot of people will probably be very disappointed about the outcome. Unfortunately, it was probably all scripted from the beginning, but that's a discussion for another day. Let's see what is dominating the news headlines come Thursday, if I don't make it back before then. Hopefully I will. Okay, I'm going to start up our music that signifies the end of the stream. I want to thank anyone who has taken the time to tune in. it is time for me to say thank you for watching. Over and out. Guess what's the last one I gotta say? Goodbye. Over and out. Done. Bye. Night.
Have you ever used orphans to study an experimental vaccine?
Yes.